Hunters and campers, what is the most unexplainable thing you have seen or heard deep in the forest? Camping in a forest in southwest England. I like to get up early when camping and walk around listening to the day before humans really start. It was a dense forest, many pretty little sun-dappered glades. I came to one and noticed there was no birdsong and no breeze. That usually means a predator, and being in England, we don't really have any dangerous predators. I wondered if I might be lucky enough to see something interesting. A bird of prey, a fox? Then the weird bit. There was the sound of rushing air, and it felt like a truck or a train passed inches in front of me. That same feeling of a lot of air being displaced by something very unstreamlined passing quickly in front of you. Enough to physically push me a few inches backwards and force me to catch my footing. It lasted seconds, and everything was silent again before the forest slowly returned to normal birdsong. I spent years commuting into London on trains, standing on train platforms as the 120 miles per hour expresses passed, and that's exactly what it felt like. Very odd. I've told this before, back in the 90s I lived in Idaho and would head off into the backcountry as my relaxation. This particular time I was about 5 miles out into the river of no return wilderness and decided to camp on a bald that had amazing views. Set up camp, made dinner, watched the stars, and then curled up in my bag for the night. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I heard something in the woods roughly 75 yards behind me. I lay there a minute to catch my bearings when I heard a child's voice say, "Hi," loudly. I knew there was nobody else out there. I got out of my bag and said hi back, feeling like a fool, but I did it. Nothing. And I wasn't going into the woods, not in the dark. I got the fire going again, made some coffee and waited until dawn. Wandered all over that bluff but found no evidence of humans. I have 2 stories that have scared the piss out of me. First story, this takes place in Oz. My friend and I were camping with my family. My family was inside our 5th wheel, and we took a tent because we knew we were going to be loud at night laughing and stuff. My family went to bed, and we sat around the campfire for a bit just talking, and all of a sudden we heard laughing just over a hill near us. Not coyotes, we've heard those before, not javelina since those aren't in the area, and no wolves either. We run off and get into our tent and lie down to watch a movie on my phone, and all of a sudden she tells me to shut up, and we go dead silent, and you could very faintly hear footsteps and then a shadow pass over a light on the outside. Never knew what it was. Second story in Glamis, California. First, may I state that Glamis is very known for thieves, as there's lots of money out there. It was about 2 to 3 a.m., and everyone, including me, was asleep. There's a train that runs out there but I can always sleep through that, but this wasn't a train. Someone started to pound, and I mean like HOA mad at you for 1 inch of grass over pound on the door, which is very uncommon. This woke me up immediately, and my mom woke up. I fell back asleep because I wasn't sure what I heard and didn't think much of it. The next morning I walk out and the stand to my dirt bike had been moved to underneath one of our windows like someone tried to peek in. About 20 years ago, my best friend and I were camping with my family. A place we had both basically grown up at, so we knew the location quite well. Anyhow, being the delinquents we were, we both left the campsite around midnight 1 a.m. to smoke a joint. We walked 5 minutes in the dark with no flashlights to a park that was on the ocean, with a dense forest jutting up against it. We are on the beach when we finish smoking and are enjoying the stars for a few minutes when we both notice something about 150 feet up the beach along the forest trail. I still have a hard time describing what we saw. Approximately 6 orbs of light appear on the trail, which runs parallel to the beach. They form in a horizontal line and start moving towards us. These lights are orbs, and unlike a flashlight, they do not project any light. No beams like a flashlight, no area like a candle. None of the trees nearby lit up. They were more of a white light, rather than the orange of a candle. Upon them moving towards us, we are both filled with an immediate sense of dread and decide we're not sticking around. We hightail it out of there. My friend glanced over while we were running perpendicular to the location, and he insists he saw them form a circle and hover down to the ground. Upon discussing it for a bit, we go back armed with weapons and flashlights to see, and there is nothing to note. I have to iterate that this was not in a location where fireflies reside, and even if there was a human element behind these lights, they were moving towards us at a pace people couldn't possibly move through a wooded forest in pitch dark. Whenever I see my friend, we still talk about it and shake our heads just trying to explain it. What are your thoughts? In 1998, I was solo hunting for the first time. My dad was in a stand about a mile away. It's about 8 a.m., and a dog walks up to me. He's a pointer, really sweet, and just seems lost. We are about 25 minutes from civilization, so there are a decent amount of people in the woods, as the season just started. I walked over with the dog following to my dad's stand. After he was done bitching at me about scaring them off, I explained, and we left for home and called this number on the collar. The weird part is, when we called the number, the man had lost his dog. He was a trained scent dog who had run off, and he had never run off before, only I was hunting in Illinois. This man lived in Michigan, and he had lost the dog 4 days ago. I still have no idea how the fuck that dog appeared in the woods that day. The man paid for his dog to be transported back to him, according to my dad. To clarify, I was hunting near Amboy, Illinois, and this man lived in northern Michigan. There is no way he could have run, and I can't even see theft as a scenario, but I guess that is possible. I.e., maybe another hunter stole him in me and tried using him in eel? When I was just out of high school, I had gone on a lake trip with a bunch of friends. Drinking, smoking cigars, and just general debauchery. The second night we were there, as we were hanging around the fire, we started to notice a weird sound coming from the opposite side of the lake. There was literally nobody around. Hadn't seen another person since we got there. One of the guys said it sounded like drums. 2 other guys and I decided we'd go exploring to see what it was. We walked about 2 miles around the lake. No paths, thick woods all around. We came to a slight opening in the trees and stopped. The sound had been getting louder and clearer the whole way. It was definitely the sound of drums. Just a steady 1-2-3 beat. As we walked into the clearing, we saw a rock ledge jutting out of the ground. Nothing else around. This was weird in itself. But combined with the drumming coming from nowhere and the clearing that didn't make sense, we were cautious. It sounded like the drums were coming from the rock. We got to about 20 feet from the rock, and out of nowhere the speed of the drums doubled. A massive wind came out of nowhere. I turned around to see the other 2 guys running away. Didn't even think, I chased after them. We ran all the way back to the camp. By the time we made it back, the wind was screaming and rain had started. It sounded like the entire forest was falling down around us. The other guys had been running around trying to get chairs, trash, and tarps all secured. Shit was flying everywhere. We all dived into the giant army-style tent we had set up just to try and keep it from blowing away. Once inside, we told the other guys what had happened. They said about 45 minutes after we had left, the wind started. They had heard the drums increase tempo right before the wind started as well. We ended up hunkered down in the tent all night. The storm was insane. In the morning we decided to go back and see if there was any sign of the people who were drumming all night. We hiked back to the clearing with the rock. After 20 minutes of searching the area, we found nothing. No drums, no signs of people at all. We wandered around the entire area. There were no roads, trails, or clearings other than the one with the rock. Zero explanation for the sound. Whenever we got home, a friend did some research at the local library. Turns out the lake we were at was a stopping point on the Trail of Tears. There are multiple reports of strange occurrences at that lake. Couldn't find anything about phantom drums, but it fit with the odd occurrences. Haven't been back, and this was 20-something years ago. I was camping in the mountains with no service. I saw 30 Starlink satellites traveling in a straight path through the night sky. I had no idea what they were. This was right after when they first started launching them, so it wasn't well known yet. I was so confused, thinking, WTF is that? Like, there has to be an explanation for that, I think? Lol. The next morning around 8 a.m. I started a hike into a canyon. It was a nice, bright, sunny day, so I had my sunglasses on. I also didn't know about a solar eclipse that covered about 80% of the sun, peaking at 9:30 in the morning. I took off my glasses around 9:20 a.m. right as I was getting to the river. I instantly noticed the dim lighting, like I still had some sunglasses on. I started looking around, wondering WTF again, rubbing my eyes to make sure it was real. I tried looking towards the sun, but it was still too bright to look at. I just stood there and thought about the lights the night before, and now this is going on. I was like, WTF is really going on? Like, am I screwed or what? Did World War III start? Maybe there really are aliens and shit. I was freaked out a little bit. Wasn't sure what to think about the last 24 hours. I said to myself, well, fuck it, I'm going fishing, and I don't give a shit. I didn't find out until later that day when I got back to civilization and everything was explained. Lol. I live in a camper surrounded by woods. A couple nights ago, around 3 a.m., I was trying very hard to sleep, and a loud, weird noise startled me. Normally my AC would drown out outside noise, but it's been cold, so I only had my not noisy space heater on. The noise was like a screech scream. Like think of an owl or eagle screech that morphs into a scream. It didn't sound human but was unsettling. We haven't had any mountain lions reported here, probably due to the lack of mountains, but there's no big cat situation. We have foxes, and maybe coyotes, but I've never seen one. So I'm straining my ears to decipher this weird yell, and then I hear the unmistakable sound of one of the roosters, Ducky, cock-a-doodling. And then the creepy sound again. Then Ducky. I go out onto my front deck for a better listen and realize Ducky is having a crow off with some other rooster who knows where, through the woods on another farm, and that someone's rooster has an extremely horror monster sounding crow. I don't know what they were saying to each other, but then another roo joined in, and I gave up on sleep. Out hunting near 100 Mile House, clear night, all the stars. A few of my buddies all around the fire. I had recently put a new 18x scope on my rifle. High-powered clear glass. We brought it out praising its clarity and found we could quite clearly see the craters and outlines of the moon on the highest zoom setting when finally it happened. 4. What appeared to be very bright stars in a formation of a compass, one for each direction. We all stopped and gazed and wondered what the hell those could be. A couple minutes after the debate, they simultaneously moved down, up, and then finally a final long stretch to the left, incredibly fast. Nothing humans were capable of. No burn trail, no nothing. I'd never been a believer in UFOs until that night. And I wasn't alone. I'll never forget what I saw, and it opened my perspective to what could be out there. I used to live near a bunch of woods and would explore with my friends all the time. Some weird shit happened there, though. One time we were walking and found a slide in the middle of the woods with torn up stuffed animals all around it. It looked like blood streaked down it, so we ran, thinking maybe an animal or some killer or something was responsible. I got curious and came back the next day. The blood was just still water and rust, that had turned fucking red. Still, I have no clue how it got back there, stuffed animals too, and why it was standing perfectly, not like it was dumped back there. We also found a big ass boat back there, weathered by the elements and animals, also filled with that red still water that looks like blood. We also found a boating license under it that was dated 1983. There was this big cabin deep in the woods that was so hard to find, but it was fully abandoned. It looked like it had been since the 20s. Still, there was old food in jars, antique chairs, and random toys everywhere. Looked like everything was left the same for years, but the entire floor was covered in dust and leaves. The kicker is there was a cow near the cabin. By himself at this abandoned cabin in the woods. He was fully black, and his face was white, so we called him Scully because he would watch us from the woods when we got close to the cabin, and he looked like a floating skull. The whole thing was so confusing. Everything was miles apart. It's not like it could be someone's abandoned property in the woods. Plus everything was aged so differently, cabin from the 20s, boat from the 80s, slide and toys from the early 2000s. So bizarre. Only a few of my friends would go there with me, the rest were too sketched out. A few years ago I was section hiking the with some friends, all experienced backpackers. We were spread out on one section. Doug was maybe 2 minutes ahead of me, and Taylor was probably 5 minutes behind me. We were hiking a loop that day and were 3 miles from the nearest trailhead, in front of us, and 4 miles from the trailhead we started from. I passed an older couple, maybe early 60s, but they were dressed like they were going to church. Khakis and a polo for the man, slacks and a blouse for her. No packs, no water, no appropriate footwear. It was odd, but they seemed fine and happy, and we spoke as they passed. When I met with Doug, he was like, "Dude, that couple was weird, right?" And I was like, "Yeah man, they seemed okay, but the vibe was strange." When Taylor showed up a few minutes later, we were like, "Yo, what did you think of that couple?" And he said, "What couple?" And we said, "Bro, obviously the older couple dressed for church." And he said, "I didn't pass anyone." There was no way he didn't. There were no side trails, no offshoots, and no other paths. When we got back to a trailhead, we filed a report with a park ranger, but nothing ever came of it. There was no car at the nearest trailhead when we made it there. I think about it a lot. In Northern California, there was a footpath behind the high school that led out to the woods that neither I nor any of my friends had taken while attending. Later, in my mid-20s, I asked several friends if they wanted to go check it out. None wanted to go, so I went alone, thinking I knew where it would lead. Along the way, I passed an old shack the size of an outhouse about a mile in. Weird, but whatever. After about another mile, I reached this clearing, which is not what I expected, but once I looked around, I totally knew where I was in relation to town. Except, there was this collection of really old construction type vehicles, like 1950s old, and humongous, rusted, and abandoned. So I go about climbing the ladders up to the top of these machines and can see my whole town. As I'm looking around, I see the most adorable young mountain lion barreling down a small ridge all flippity-floppity, about 50 yards away coming towards me, and for a few seconds I felt like Snow White admiring nature, until my brain kicked in and began panicking about where its mother was. As I, the fireman, slid down the ladder from the equipment I was on, I took off in a sprint just in time to see her about 50 yards behind me. I'm fit, but not athletic, and that day was the first and only day I have ever run so fast in my entire life. I ran so fast I could hear the wind whistling through the hoop earrings I normally wore, up the ridge, past the shack, and finally to the lawn where I started, the whole way hearing the ground rustling behind me. Not sure how, but our janitor was already out of his maintenance office with his rifle pointed in my direction as I bolted out of the wilderness, and I swear I ran right into him. After I puked, which I had to hose down out of sheer gratefulness, he was able to tell me he could hear the ruckus and wasn't sure what to expect, but he saw the mountain lion stop as I crossed onto the lawn. When I told him how I found the abandoned construction equipment a couple miles out, he had no idea what I was talking about. Many years later, I went again with a friend, and the equipment was gone, and I can't fathom how it was moved because of its size, location, and condition, without our whole town knowing about such a big project to remove it. Approximately 25 years ago in the California Sierra Nevadas, my brothers and I went camping. I couldn't tell you exactly where because my brother chose the spot, but I remember it being Eagle's Nest or something. All I know is that we had no business being up there in the vehicles we took. It was an exceptionally long and slow journey up the mountain, but it was gorgeous. Giant trees, granite everywhere, lush valleys, clean air, and blue skies for days. It was a deer camp all the way, but we were pretty green about deer hunting. Whatever, it was a chance to stretch our legs and rifles. We set up camp on a flat spot between a bend in the road and a dry creek bed. After getting the tent up, we explored the area, did some rock scrambling, and got our bearings. Nothing looked out of the ordinary, but I did notice a very large deadish-looking tree near the creek. I think it stuck out to me because it looked soft, almost termite-ridden, soft, and very crumbly. Nature is neat, but whatever, it's time for beers by the fire. In the middle of the night, I'm instantly awakened with a ground-shaking boom. My sleeping brain heard the incident, but my awake brain was dealing with the consequences. I figured it was an animal by the tent, but I didn't hear breathing or footsteps. Regardless, I lay in my sleeping bag straight up petrified. I didn't know what happened, but my hair was standing on end, my ears were overworking and misinterpreting every sound, and I felt paralyzed. Eventually, and who knows how long later, I fell back asleep. Nobody else in my tent was aware or oddly alert, so I figured it was just me. The next morning when the sun rose, I cautiously approached my brothers and asked if they heard anything. They mumbled, "Yeah, kinda, maybe." Definitely not how I remembered it. So I started walking in larger and larger concentric circles trying to discover what made me freak out. As I approached the creek bed, everything was covered in bits of redwood. Here, there, everywhere. Oh my God, no, really? Could that have happened? Yes, it had. The redwood fell over in the middle of the night, happened to align with the creek bed, and literally exploded on the granite boulders. It was pure luck that it fell that direction and not ours. It was also pure terror that it landed on boulders and blew up and didn't land softly in the forest, where its fall could have been cushioned by other trees. I immediately went and got my brother and a laser rangefinder from my hunting kit, and we talked about it. It was exactly 100 yards from our tent. I now feel comfort in knowing the answer to the philosophical question: if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Yeah, we were there, but I can assure you it definitely makes a huge fucking sound. About 20 years ago I went camping with my girlfriend, wife now, off the Appalachian Trail in the North Georgia mountains. We camped about 100 yards off a fire road, which we drove up in my truck. I had firewood in the bed of my truck. I chose not to haul to the campsite. I noticed just before dark the quantity of firewood seemed lower than I remembered. I thought nothing of it at the time, as we were a 45-minute drive from anywhere, and I was fairly certain there were no other hikers or campers close by. Nearing midnight, I decided to get a couple more pieces of wood. My wife was not comfortable being alone in the woods, so she walked to the truck with me. There was no moon that night, so I grabbed my flashlight as it was completely dark. I also grabbed my gun. My wife asked me more than once if a gun was really necessary. When we got to my truck, we heard rustling about 20 feet away in the fire road. I shined my light in that direction, and we saw a middle-aged man and two teenage boys. They were filthy with tattered clothes, certainly no hikers. There were also no homes for miles. Think of the movie Deliverance. The man asked, "Do y'all have any sticks?" I replied, "Nope," grabbed the last couple pieces of wood, and returned to our campsite. I told my wife within their earshot, that's why I brought a gun. Never saw nor heard them again. My family and I were camping on a remote ski hill in summertime. A friend was getting married on the property the next day. We were the only people on the hill this day as we arrived early to greet vendors the following morning. My husband had to whip into town for something, leaving my 10-month-old son and me alone. My son was napping in the tent when I suddenly felt all the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and had an overwhelming feeling not to let him out of my sight. Then I heard what I can only describe as a language similar to those of click tribes in Africa. Like Kosa or something, but even more clicking. This was in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, British Columbia, Canada. I have been camping literally my entire life and have never before since heard anything like it. It surrounded us, birds calling from every direction. It was absolutely terrifying, and all I could think to do was turn on a podcast I had downloaded, no service, super loud on my phone to make it seem like there were more people around. Shortly after I turned it on, the voices stopped, and I never heard them again. I truly wish I'd thought to record it because even when I tried to explain it to my husband later that day, he just looked at me like I was nuts. Around 40 years ago I followed a neighbor and his son that was around my age but lived in another city with his mom, so I had never met him, to the Swedish mountains for some fishing and camping. They had been there many times and the dad had been there long before the son was born. This place was not allowed to be camping at, but being so off-grid and the times they'd been there they thought it would be okay. Right after we parked the car, one of the locals complained about it wasn't a place for tourists. The dad told him that we just gonna go to the river and look at the waterfall, so the local just grunted and went away. We took our gear and started walking. After many hours we arrived to a beautiful plateau with a bunch of small ponds, some only a couple of meters apart. We set up the tents and settled in, made a fire and just relaxed. It was around midsummer so the sun was up 24 hours. No big trees were growing there at that altitude, just bushes and mountain birch which gave us a long view area. One part of the area was very stony/rocky and probably a leftover from the last ice age. We started to fish and had a great few hours. The dad went to sit by the fire and have a drink. It was in the middle of the night but we were not tired so we went to explore some of the ponds a bit away, and all of a sudden we saw a person completely dressed in white and silver Laplander clothes. We didn't see the face and the person looked like it hovered/floated over the stony parts and was coming our way. It disappeared behind the bigger rocks then showed up again. We thought it was some of the locals that was mad at us for camping at the place, so we hid behind a rock and was too afraid to look. The kid said it must be a ghost and I was like, what do you mean? He explained he had been experiencing them all his life. After some time we had to look anyway, and it was gone, and the dad had fallen asleep. We woke him up, asking what the person wanted, and he got all white in the face and said he didn't see anyone. I noticed he knew what it was but didn't say anything. We went to sleep, and after some hours we heard hundreds of reindeer moving fast past the tents. It sounded like a train passing. The next day the dad was really stressed, and we ate a quick breakfast, and he said we needed to pack up and leave. Even though we had planned to stay for several days, he didn't say why, but we packed in a hurry and left. After many hours we arrived at the car, and it was like a mountain had been lifted from his shoulder. He looked at us and said, "This is something you are never going to talk about again, do you understand?" We both looked at each other and said yes, even though I really didn't know what had happened exactly. Was it an old mountain ghost just looking at what we were up to make sure we didn't destroy any land? Who knows, but we didn't talk about it again because the kid moved, and I have not seen him since.